Hi, everybody again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a specific topic that I'm familiar with as someone who has grown up in the recreation community, the river community, but the kind of the recreation part of it, and that is a concept called whitewater courses or whitewater parks. Could I see a show of hands if you think you know what whitewater parks are? So if you really think you know what whitewater parks are, give me an example of a city. Just shout it out. An example of a city that has one. You're all correct. That's an easy one. But I'm talking a little bit about the evolution of the whitewater parks because they were first started, I think, in the very first example of someone moving some boulders around in the river was in Kernville, California. The place that's called Peanut Butter Park, and it's a bunch of slalom racers wanted better eddies to train in. So that was a long time ago, but since then there have been many more built. And even before 1980, there were really just a small handful. But since then, there have been quite a few more built. And depending on if you count the projects, where there might be multiple projects on the river or the river itself, there's somewhere between 75 and 100 projects that have been built in the United States. And they're largely built out this way. Most of them are built in Colorado. And I think that's thanks to GOCO and the availability of funding from Great Outdoors Colorado. But as you can see, they're really all over the place. These are some that are coming up that are in some state of development. Most of you don't think of Tulsa, Oklahoma as a whitewater, but there is a project there. And that's actually a combination of taking down 3 low-head dams and improving fish passage on the Arkansas River. And this is crazy. There's a lot of work being done in the Midwest, Charles City, Iowa. And the ones that are in bold are built. The ones that are not bold are in some state of development. Most of the ones that are built in the Midwest started as projects that were partly remediation, partly dam removal, partly we just had a big awful flood. So as we're repairing our river, can we also restore it so that it would facilitate recreation? Most whitewater parks, if you hear the term, it's used for a variety of different types of construction. Most of them are in rivers. So, for example, Avon, Colorado, they took a rubble laden bank area, very unstable stream there, and made it nice. And if you go upstairs on that, there's a before and after. If you go up the stairs, Burger King and Starbucks are right there. And I-70. Green River, Wyoming, they wanted to kind of create a tribute to John Wesley Powell. They're very proud of his launching in the Grand Canyon trip from there. And they built it, it fell apart, they had to rebuild it, but now they have a wave shape or a facility that can change the wave shape for surfers or kayakers and so forth. It's also signed nicely off of I-70. You can see it on the highway. So diversions are where you're taking water out and you're sending it back in through gravity. The reason I have one in Germany here on the left-hand side, it was the first major built environment for recreation. And that course in Augsburg was built for the 1972 Olympics. That picture was just taken a couple of years ago, so it's still one of the most well-visited parks in the town, and they treat it as a really special place, so it's not kind of just a sideshow. South Bend, Indiana built theirs, and just a few years after Augsburg, because a bunch of guys from South Bend were faced with what they call an East Raceway, which is a diversion off the St. Joseph River that had been that was just lying idle, that had been a hydropower diversion, and nobody was doing anything in this awful place. So they improved it. So the Parks and Rec Department now runs tubes, racks, and they have concerts and so forth. And then Denver, that probably looks familiar, Confluence Park has a diversion on the river right side. And what it was originally designed to do was two things: lower the floodplain after the awful 1968 flood, and then also divert water on river left to cool a power plant 2 miles downstream. The power plant no longer needs that cooling, so they don't use it anymore. But that's what it was originally designed for. And then the self-contained courses that are self-contained. There's pumps. They get water from a local source. The one on the upper right-hand side is the Adventure Sports Center in Western Maryland, which is actually at the top of a little mountain. In Maryland, it's a mountain. It's like 1,000 feet. And they share a reservoir with a ski resort. They're on one side of the mountain, the hill of the mountain, and ski resorts on the other side. They share a reservoir, and in the winter time, in the winter time, they pumps a little bit of water from the water source through the Whitewater course. It's not open to the public. It's super cool. So when it gets to the snowmaking machines, it's cooler, and they don't have to. They hardly ever use that stuff that you see water with to make snow at higher temperatures. So they can make snow when it's like 34, 35, 36 degrees out. So it's kind of a nice symbiotic relationship with the two facilities. The U.S. National Whitewater Center in Charlotte is a 500-acre facility. It's got climbing, bike riding, and so forth, and it's in an area that was otherwise unused by the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and surrounding counties. Both of them have proven that you can't make a lot of money with just getting people rafting. Both of them built their projects, had to default on some loans. Loans were forgiven. They're making their operating objectives, but I think they're both very ambitious. Say that. So this is kind of the range of what projects have cost. A big range. And it's not just about kayaking. It's alternative economic development. And I think the future for these projects is through the aging of our dams. And then from a recreation perspective, very few people will drive hours to go to a river to maybe find that a river is running. People fragment their time now. They're not just kayakers or rafters. They do a bunch of different things. They're less willing to go hours from home unless it's a destination like that you have to go to a certain place to ski. So it's kind of increasing the awareness and the facilitation for these local projects. The way the projects still usually happen is those who are most familiar with the resource come up with the idea. And it's usually they see it as a recognized anchor activity. Well, first they see the opportunity, then they have to go to the town council, get kicked out of the town council meeting because it's a bunch of kayakers wanting to do a playground in the backyard, and they have to figure out that really there's a broader appeal for the project. They go back, and to the degree that they're able to change the perception of the benefit of the project, they're able to develop a stakeholder group. They're able to get some more money for the project, and then as it's being designed and built, then it's sort of up to the town and their marketing ability, their coalition of stakeholders that they develop to figure out whether or not this thing has a longer life. This is probably, it's sort of out of hand because how big the numbers are, but for $70 million that was invested in Confluence Park area, $10 million is returned in reinvestment. So 80202 is now the highest average salary zip code in the country, someone told me. And as you know, all the sports facilities, REI flagship store, a lot of retail and residents has returned to that part of the city. So it's a big, big success. In Reno, the Truckee River was renovated with a Whitewater Park, and they were very aggressive about promoting it. So the very first year, months after it was completed, the city invested a lot in creating an event that kind of put it on the map. And it was this strategic project for the city that was tired of trying to compete against Las Vegas' terms, and decided they wanted to cater more towards outdoor sports-minded people. And this was the vehicle they used for that, or as one of the vehicles they used for that. Still very popular. And then, so this is kind of neat that I'm involved in freestyle kayaking, and all of the kids who are juniors on our team, or kids who try out for the team, all live at Whitewater Parks. Why? Because if they can't drive themselves to go practice, and if they want to get really good, they have to practice a lot. So they, in this case, this gal's parents moved to Pueblo, and she could practice, and she became world champion 2 years ago. And then another interesting benefit is for those who require extra help getting to the river. If you've ever pushed a wheelchair up a gravel incline, it's really difficult. And if you're working with a really talented and really skilled kayaker who's a bilateral amputee, it's really, and it's at the heart of everyone, that person to struggle once they get out of their kayak to get back up to the road of the car. But when you have a ramp and you have a nice trail, 88 accessible facilities, it evens the playing field a lot. So here's a project that was just completed last year that's really close to here, and it involves something that I think is evolving as a more integral part of Whitewater Park development, and that is fish passage. For many years, traditional fish passage designers, developers, and river managers thought that they were incompatible with recreational engineering. Yeah, there are a lot of people who have kayaked or rafted or whatever floated down rivers that fish have been on for a long, long time. So they really can be compatible. And now some of the projects, this is the Fish and Wildlife Project, where there's a dangerous situation at the Hardwood Dam nearby on the Madison River. And the managers had the foresight to save the dam, make it safer above and below, and create a diversion on the side. But the goofy thing is, I think that they made 2 diversions, one for the fish, and you see that the upper right-hand picture is what you would see if you were a fish in the channel. And then decided that there's another channel for people, waters going down. And the engineers argued for only doing one, but they didn't win the argument, but they're waiting now to see if fish are hopefully going to be going up both channels, actually. Boise is a good example of several of the projects that not only include fish passage, but include cooperation with irrigators. So here's a situation where a kayaker started the project, but irrigators were really interested in improving a very, very old, like just a wooden clapboard gate, very manual system for managing water. So they've got a better water irrigation system, and then some good rapids. And now the only controversy in town is between surfboard surfers and kayaks. They like different types of wave shapes. I don't have any pictures of this. This is a self-contained project. Oklahoma City has been very successful, which they call I forget what it stands for, not program. The petty sales tax has to collect a certain amount of money. They've improved downtown schools, they've improved their streets and lights and a bunch of facilities for the community, and they did that again. They're raising $25 million to build a whitewater park there. And they're underway, so they'll probably be built in 2 years. So here's a major project that is probably the largest reaching river that's been restored for recreational purposes. This is way down the Chattahoochee River, almost to where it becomes almost to Florida. And they're going to be restoring 2 miles of river and dams that were both really old. A local foundation called the Bradley Turner Foundation bought both dams, just tore one out. The other one was a hydropower facility. They asked the Southern Company, to do an analysis of the plant, and it turned out that it was really uneconomic to continue running it. So they got them to surrender the hydropower license, and they just took that one out too. And Phoenix City was not misspelled. They really spelled it that way. So just like a little, like a side thing on developing these whitewater parks, it's not just like go and see where the boulders look good and ground them in and call it a day. There's a lot of work that goes behind it. In the case of the Chattahoochee, because it was such a big project, they did a lot of physical modeling. So this is a couple of pictures of 1 to 12 scale, 12 to 1 scale physical model, like all the labs in Maine. So they could really avoid wasting big money in the river by modeling in scale. So there's like the one section of the river was Whitewater. The same section was water. And what's he doing? He's a kayaker. He's going to make sure the guy can surf. And what's interesting about this project is that this reach of river, so the 2 dams came down. Above them, there are still 3 dams that are operational hydro dams. There's a tremendous amount of gradient there. So the water will fluctuate. There are peak power plants. And the water goes every day in the summer from 800 CFS to somewhere between 8 and 17,000 CFS. And in the winter, it does that same kind of cycle twice a day. So planning for that, when the 2 dams were still up, before you knew really where the water wanted to flow, was an engineering great challenge. That's a picture of the kind of modeling we're doing. So now, back to reality. This is the construction last year. This is before the dams, where both dams are breached. And you can't tell, but the area that they're working on was full of rocks that were like a bed was cleared out. Rocks were grouted in lightly, like in a little, in a bathtub shape, and they were there. They were left lightly grounded so that if the water didn't flow exactly like they thought it would flow, they would have a little room to adjust. Because they were just working on drawings. Excavation. Now, what's happening here is that this shows, the photo shows that dam that those guys were standing in front of, partly breached, but our magical hill is going to click on this link and just show. I wish this were closer up, but this is from December. There's the dam. I wish I had sound. So they really did blow up, and that's what they did was they blew up half the dam, and that's the Alabama side, the far side, so they could continue working in the dry on the left side. They didn't have to build a coffer dam so that they could do it. And when they were done on the dry side, they did have to build a coffer dam, push the water over so they could continue to work on that side. Now, okay, go ahead, Bill. We'll go back to that other picture in a second, but what it showed was underneath the dam was an old wooden dam because it was built during the Civil War time. When they were excavating, the cultural affairs folks made them do some dredging. They found some cannon balls, some really, really old artifacts from the Civil War. So between that bridge and that trough is where that dam was that those guys were working. The other picture, so it's now completely gone. And the water is not turned on now. This will take a second. But this is not the high water release. It's just the normal flow. They've had a lot of rain. We might have to give up on this. Taking too long. I think we can give up. I'm not buffering. So, restored river, they're going to run whitewater trips. They've got a couple outfitters hired for these. It's 2-mile trip, and that will be the end of the trip. So that in the east, that's like really big water. That's 5,000 feet. And just a couple of before and after pictures. This is looking north. This is in the Flatwater area, but it shows where it's kind of random, like not awful, but it's restored and improved so that people can get in recreation boats and learn, basic paddling things or wade or whatever. It'll always look like that. And again, looking downstream from the same place, that's what it looked like. This is what it looks like now. So it's restored with better access. So for Whitewater Park projects, the future is more multiple purpose designs for fish passage, involvement with hydropower licensing. There are a couple of projects like that going on in irrigation partnerships, inclusion in master plans so thinking way ahead before we need any older, promoting outdoor activity, and then networking for coordinating events. And this is sort of not the dark side, but the next side of this is that there's still a lot of work to integrate with fish passage projects because the traditional designs still predominate. And a lot of low-head dams still exist. Tens of thousands of low-head dams still exist that are still the most unsafe things, but they're still the cheapest, most efficient way to put up a dam. There still needs to be working for that cooperation with dam construction is achieved, is improved towards having more recreation. And river parks are now competing with other river projects. So that's as river parks become popular, they may impede an organization's ability to raise funds for another restoration project that's not recreation oriented. So as they become more favored, they become a competitor to other river parks. That was it. Thank you very much. Anyone have any quick questions before Risa tries to disappear off the stage? Nope.
She learned this from you, Cara. I was just wondering if there are any studies on some of the parks that have been around now, maybe over a 5-year or 10-year period, if the kids that are occupying those, if that's led to them exploring other rivers that maybe don't have cell reception, or is it just kind of keeping them in town? Just curious if there's any kind of study.
There's no study that I know of. There's only anecdotal information about people here and there have come into the sport. That's where I see them. If they're casual users of rivers, no one's really tracking that. And one thing also that isn't being tracked well enough is success with fish passage projects. Sometimes they kind of get wedged. Fish passage recreation have sort of gotten wedged together at the last minute, and then when you're developing the project, long-term monitoring isn't part of the pitch to get the project built. So it's often an afterthought, or people say, well, yeah, we'll do that later. So I think it's really, we're not sufficiently tracking how well fish passage is doing as a result of this project. Any other questions?